welcome back, friends, to the 360 Sports Network Fantasy Football Virtual Draft Guide. Tonight, we're going to wrap up all the position ranking podcasts here, talking about defenses and their role in your fantasy draft. I'm the Value Man, James Dotson, and I find there to be a lot of value in defenses where a lot of people don't. So, I'm probably going to be a little bit different from the way the majority of you fantasy football experts and newbies and all you out there talk about. And like kickers, it's a very debated position, but I feel like defense actually is my strategy, at least with it, is one of the reasons why I feel like I can do well in my fantasy league, because I go about it a different way from everybody else. So see what you think. Most of you, you're either not going to get a defense, or you're going to try to get the top defense of Seattle. There is a more diverse set of strategies. There is no more diverse set of strategies, I should say, than what you can do with your defenses. So here's what we're going to start with. Seattle, best defense, by far. The question is, when do you take them? Well, we just had our 3SN draft, and the Saint Galaverson decided to be a little bit devilish. He took Seattle's defense in the 5th round. I thought that might have been a little bit high. It definitely is a little bit high for my liking. I'm looking at Seattle probably about the 7th round. If they're still there in about the 7th or 8th round, I'm probably going to take Seattle. Because, I mean, to be honest, how can you go wrong with taking Seattle? Here's my main reason why I have no problem taking the Seahawks. I'm not too mad where Alex took his. You're going to play Seattle every week, no matter what. You don't need to have a backup defense, so that's an extra roster spot. I mean, you'll pick somebody up for the bye week. Okay, cool. But you don't need to be playing the waiver wire game each week, like I know a lot of you want to do. And here's the thing, okay? You're going to play that waiver wire game each week, and we'll talk about this a little bit later. What if there's other positions that you need to make up? You're going to lose a lot of spots there. So you know what you have week in, week out. Your Seahawks, you're going to play, again, every week, maybe one game that you would consider somebody else if you can get lucky. But at the same time, look at the downside of this. You just wasted a 5th round pick. And that's a potential big skill position pick. So that's why I think taking Seattle obviously is a risk, because you're losing a potential great player in that 5th round to get a defense, which, they're not huge point scorers, but if you get a team like Seattle, yes, you'll get consistent big points, which I can't argue with. So that's strategy number 1, taking Seattle. And again, I would say 7th or 8th round. Now, complete opposite end of the spectrum. The mad scientist, Greg Bichero. In our 3SN draft, he did the complete opposite and didn't take a defense at all. He is very content with playing that waiver wire game each and every week. He says, I'm not wasting a roster spot early on, in the middle of the draft, anywhere in the draft, because I can find, again, a potential booming pick. So before week 1, he's going to play the waiver wire game, go pick up a defense. He's going to see whatever free agency defense is the best matchup for the week, go pick them up, and put them right in his lineup. Here's the downside to this strategy, because I used to do this strategy as well. More and more people are starting to use this strategy. In a 12-team league, I'd say at least 6 to 8 are probably doing this on a weekly basis, where they're going and searching for the defense that's going to be best each week. With this strategy growing so rapidly in popularity, what's the guarantee that you're going to find a good defense? There might be 2 decent matchups on the waivers that you could be able to pick up. But there might be 6 people going for it that week, whether it's based on, they're all playing in the same matchup, in the same strategy of going for the best defense on free agency, or maybe just guys who have buys and need to pick up a new defense for the week. It's very, very possible, and it happened more often than not to me last year, where I couldn't get one of the top defenses to pick up. So I ended up being stuck, with a team like Oakland or Indianapolis, or whoever's, whoever's playing Indianapolis, for example. If that's the best guys that are available, you could get stuck with that. And especially if you're in a league where you can get negative points, that's a big, big risk that you'd be taking. And then you have to debate, well, do I not take any defense and take 0 points? And it's just a mess. So you have to be very, very careful with that. And here's the other thing. If you're doing this every week, you're wasting your waiver wire position. You're wasting, say somebody comes out of nowhere who just did absolutely great. Here's an example. When Nick Foles came into the limelight. Well, if I had to use a waiver wire pick the previous week to get a defense, to get Tennessee because that week they were playing Jacksonville who couldn't score. Okay, cool, I got a couple points on that. But now I'm down at the bottom pecking order in terms of waiver wire pickups. So I lost any chance I could get of getting a guy like Nick Foles at that point when he was on his absolute tirade. So just a couple things to keep in mind. So as you're going through the waiver wire process, we better talk about, what defense should you pick up. Obviously, you're looking at the matchups, but there is another big key that people don't think about. And again, it's about knowing your league. A lot of leagues, they don't care about defenses enough, so they stay with a pretty standard scoring system. And there could be, though, slight differences in that system. So here's the normal one. Normally, you get 2 points for a turnover, 1 point for a sack, and then you have these, different point levels where, okay, you get a shutout, you get 10 points. You give up, 2 to 8 points, and you get, 6 fantasy points. If you're between 9 and 12, you're at 4 who knows what it is. It's very straightforward, though, for the most part. Here's the thing, though. I'm looking mainly at turnovers and sacks. Because, like I said, 2 points for a turnover, 1 point for a sack is pretty standard. But you can see 1 point difference in some of these numbers very easily. For example, one league I'm doing here has only 1 point for an interception, but a fumble still has 2. So obviously now fumbles are more important than interceptions. Or maybe a sack is worth 2 points, or everything is worth 1 point, and more emphasis on sacks. So then you got to look at then teams who are going to have more emphasis on those sacks. So just look at what stat category is getting you the most points. So say you have emphasis on sacks, I'm looking at teams like Buffalo or Carolina. Those are the teams that get a lot of sacks. So I'm looking at them for sure. Interceptions, you look at teams like Houston gets a good number of interceptions. They're also pretty high on fumble recoveries as well. So, you're looking there. Buffalo, same way, a lot of fumbles. You can see teams even maybe like Arizona getting interceptions, that sort of thing. Those are the teams to look at there. And then the last kind I look at, points allowed. Okay? Points allowed, Kansas City, Detroit, believe it or not, were 2 of the lowest teams in terms of points allowed. Obviously Seattle, very low. So those are just a couple examples. Even San Francisco, still losing all their guys, but they still are a pretty good team. So keep your eye on them. Watch what they can do in points allowed. And then obviously the last one, touchdowns. Maybe you have a lot of emphasis, whether it's a defensive touchdown or a special teams touchdown. If so, you're getting Arizona, period. They score 5 touchdowns on defense every year. You're going to get Houston, same reason. They score a lot of touchdowns. Okay, so here's the deal. You can be the Saint, get Seattle, not worry about your defense all year. You can be the mad scientist. Follow the league settings, figure out what teams are going to be best, pick the top defense that's available each week based on your scoring system and based on the matchup that week. Me personally, I'm going to get the best value. I am the value man, okay? My strategy kind of ends up right in between those two strategies of Alex and Greg. I would love Seattle, but somebody is always going to take them before I go for them. 5th round, it's just too early for a defense, like I said. However, I can see myself taking a top, like the tier 2 defense. I can see myself taking one of those guys in round, 9 or 10 for sure. Teams like Buffalo, Arizona, I mentioned, Houston, St. Louis. I would go for any one of them in that round 9 to 10 range. And which one am I going to pick? Well, again, depends on, like I said before, if I know there's emphasis on turnovers, I'm probably going to go a little bit more for Buffalo. If there's more emphasis on sacks, maybe I can wait an extra round and get a team like Carolina because they're going to get a lot of sacks. You can even look Miami is looking pretty solid with some of the guys they have, especially for sacks. So it's all based on league setup. But here's the thing. Why would I do this? At this point, the main starters are gone in round 9 or 10. So it's a little bit different than picking, Seattle a few rounds earlier. I'm not feeling like I'm wasting a pick here if I get a defense. Like, I'm not going to get somebody who I'm going to start week in, week out. So that really kind of avoids the cons of the Seattle system because then, okay, I've lost all this pick. So I've avoided that. Great. Also, I'm still picking a top 5 defense. I feel confident that I'm going to be starting this defense, no matter which of those 4 I mentioned, probably in 80 to 90% of my weeks. No doubt. I'm going to be starting them. So I don't have to worry about playing the waiver wire game for about 90% of the weeks during the year. So now I've avoided the cons of, the waiver wire system. And with so many people doing that right now, I feel like I don't have a chance to get those good defenses. So I'm just going to stay away from that completely. So for me, I'm getting one of the top 5 defenses, but I'm not going to waste my pick and go and get after Seattle. And here's the other thing that I see a lot too, and I've been notorious for falling into the trap, even though I say I won't, but I still do. Usually, like I said, Seattle's going to go first. Round 5, round 6, round 7, whatever. Usually it's about a round or two later that the second defense goes. Then the person right after probably will take the third defense, and you get a big, big run on defenses right there. If it gets past those 4 or 5, defenses, and you don't feel confident about them, because I really don't feel confident after the first 4 or 5, then I'm not going to go and reach and take a defense. Oh my goodness, the defenses are flying off the board. I better get one now. Don't do that. Once you get past the top 5 or 6 defenses, you stay as far away from as possible. Don't draft one or get one in the last round at the best. And then you are going to play the waiver wire game. But don't go reaching just because you see, 4 defenses have gone in the last 5 picks and you're afraid they're all going to run out. Don't do it. I've been known to fall victim to it. I don't want you to do it either. Alright, so there you have it. 3 different strategies that you can use. Pick Seattle early and just deal with it. Work the waiver wire each week by not picking a defense at all or getting in the last round. Or, the one I prefer the most, get that tier 2 defense around round number 10. Whatever you choose, just stay with it, stay confident with it, and I've seen all 3 strategies work very well, so it's whatever you prefer. Well, thank you for tuning in, ladies and gentlemen. This wraps up our podcast series for the position rankings. Make sure you keep checking back each and every day, each and every week, all through the year for fantasy football updates, podcasts, and some work from the Fantasy Football Toolkit right here at 360sportsnetwork.com. I'm James Dotson for 3SN, guys. Have a good night.